Good evening, everyone. I will call this Tigard City Council and Town Center Development Agency and Local Contract Review Board meeting to order. I think that's the most I've called to order at one time. City Recorder Krager, please call roll.
Councillor Hu,
Here.
Mayor Lube,
Here.
Councillor Robbins,
Here.
Councillor Schlack,
Here.
Councillor Shaw,
Here.
Council President Wolf,
Here.
Youth Councillor Manini is absent, and Councillor Gudusi.
Present.
Thank you. If everyone will please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
City Council or City Team, any non-agenda items this evening? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to public comment. If you'd like to provide public comment, the phone number is 503-966-4101. And please call now to get into the queue or log in for video testimony. Anyone publicly who wants to comment in person, there is a sign-up sheet at the back of the room. We did receive one written public comment yesterday by noon from Sharon Kelly in regards to the Just Compassion Shelter. City Recorder Krager, has anyone signed up in person today?
No, they haven't.
No. Okay, thank you so much. Mr. Thornburg, are there any phone callers in the queue or anyone wishing to comment by video today?
Not at this time.
All right, thank you so much. And we will move on to the city manager report with interim city manager Drake.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. It's a pleasure to be with you tonight. We're in the process of working on the internal portion of the budget, and being interim manager, I'm very pleased and impressed with the process. And just from somebody who's served a long time managing cities, it's a very open, transparent process, and everybody's getting their say. And I think from a taxpayer's perspective, you should know that everything is being scrutinized effectively and discussed the way it should be before we bring it to the council for their approval. So I've traditionally always thought the budget process was my favorite time of the year with cities, and they're doing an excellent job. Also, the Officer Enzensberger was honored by the American Legion for his Officer of the Year award, and that's a very high honor for any police officer, and I think the public should be excited to have someone receive that kind of honor. The staff and I, leadership team and I, did some conflict resolution work, and I think that's helpful too, because it allows us to, when we disagree, we don't throw things in the room, but we find a way to resolve issues and move on for the public. In the last couple of weeks too, Washington County is going to be revamping library services coming up, and they've got some recommendations which are still being worked on, but things are ever changing, and it should provide more efficient service for the libraries in the county. Council goals process, there was a work session, I think it was last meeting, and the staff and I have been assigned to bring forward a product based on the council's input, and we should have that, I think, the first meeting in April. And lastly, things have been moving well in the city, and I'm pleased to be here, and I think leadership is very effective here, and people are doing their jobs. So it's been an honor to be here for the last 4 weeks. Mayor, thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for interim city manager Drake? No? I do see someone signing in. Carol, are they wishing to make public comment? Okay. Feel free to just come on up. We'll do public comment. It already passed, but we'll bring it back up for you. Come have a seat and turn the microphone on. Let us know your name and the city in which you live, and you have 2 minutes.
Hi, I live here in Tigard, Oregon, just right across Tigard High School. Good evening, and council members. My name is Isaac. I have a degree in criminal justice and criminology. Got a master's in education. I'm a father, homeowner here since 2017. I'm a co-owner of Kush Cart, a licensed cannabis delivery service that's operating in Portland. I'm here today to urge Tigard to sign on to House Bill 2519, which would allow legal cannabis delivery across county lines. Right now, Tigard residents only rely on cannabis for medical or wellness reasons, have no legal delivery option. At Kush Cart, we deliver 25,000 orders. Many individuals who cannot travel to a dispensary due to age, disability, or medical conditions. These residents deserve safe, regulated access just like they have for prescriptions and groceries. Supporting delivery isn't just about convenience, it's about public health, responsible access. The war on drugs criminalized cannabis for decades, but now we have a different problem: over prescription of harmful painkillers when safer plant-based alternatives exist. By allowing delivery, Tigard can help reduce reliance on opioids and offer residents a discreet legal way to access what they need. Tigard is already saturated with cannabis storefront signage. Just drive down Highway 99 and count them. Delivery reduces the need for excessive advertising, keeping access available without adding visual clutter. Unlike dispensaries, our storefront is invisible, and unmarked cars provide safe, professional service. This is also a smarter, greener solution. Instead of hundreds of individual trips to dispensaries, our hybrid fleet consolidates orders, reducing traffic emissions and neighborhood congestions. By signing on to HB 2519, the city of Tigard modernizes cannabis access, improves health, and reduces unnecessary storefront impact. The industry is already in Tigard, so let's make it work smarter. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Isaac. We will move on to the consent agenda, which is used for routine items like minutes or intergovernmental contracts. We can remove an item for separate discussion or process it completely. On the consent agenda tonight is an IGA with ODOT for Fano Creek Regional Trail Crossing Safety Improvements for Oregon Community Paths Grant, and a contract for cured in-place pipe rehabilitation. That being said, the city team has recommended that we either pull the IGA with ODOT or provide the city manager with the authority to sign on our behalf. There are still some outstanding contract issues, and so the IGA in front of us is actually not accurate, and we won't have an accurate one until some additional conversations with ODOT. So my question would be, would you prefer that it comes back before us, or are you comfortable with the change of directing the city manager to sign the IGA on our behalf? Yeah, Councilor Shack?
I suppose a question for Principal Engineer Furman. If we were to delay, say, a week just so we could read this and get more familiar with it, would that cause any substantial practical difficulties?
Come on up, Joe.
Good evening, Council. For the record, Joe Wisniewski, City Engineer. The changes that are pending right now, we believe are, they won't impact the scope of work or the financial contribution from the city. However, to answer your question, that if we took a week or two to come back, it will not negatively impact the schedule. So whatever you're comfortable with, we can support on that.
Council President Wolf?
So given the question by Councilor Schlack, I'm assuming his preference would be to poll, and I would support that just so we could see a final copy.
Okay.
So thank you, Mayor.
Sounds good. We will pull it. So the consent agenda will now be the contract for cured in place pipe rehabilitation. Are there any questions, comments, or a motion? And we'll call it the amended consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda as amended.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any additional discussion? Seeing none, all of those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. The consent agenda is adopted by unanimous vote of the council. All right, we will convene the Town Center Development Agency Board for this next item. And so our nameplates change. And I will, the next item is a joint meeting with the Town Center Development Agency Board and Town Center Advisory Commission. Please come on up. Welcome.
Good evening. I'm Sean Farley, Redevelopment Manager and Liaison to the TCAC, the Town Center Advisory Commission. Next slide. So just a quick agenda. I'll say a few remarks. We'll do some introductions of the Town Center Advisory Commission, and then the commission will take you through their annual report and their strategic plan. And then hopefully we can engage in some discussion. Next slide. So the TCAC are the dedicated volunteers. They advise the TCDA board on TIF plan, policy, budget, and implementation. They're one of Tigard's 12 boards and commissions. There's 11 voting members who are appointed by City Council. They meet monthly, hybrid meeting, second Wednesday of the month at Town Hall. They do accept comment and input. City Council liaisons are Councilor Hu, and alternate is Councilor Schlack, and they've been attending the past couple of meetings. Next slide. So now we'll just have the commission introduce themselves. Say your name. You have to use the mic, and you'll want it to be green, so we could just pass the mic down.
All right, I'll go first. My name is Gabriel Hio Velasquez. I am the chair of the Town Center Advisory Commission. It's nice to see you all again. It's fun to be here.
Bob Tomasovich, I'm the vice chair. Nice to be here again, too.
Sarah Erickson. Sarah Serrata.
I am Patty Lofgren, community member.
Hi, I'm Michelle Powers. Honored to be here. Elise Shearer.
And John Goodhouse. I have a Beachette Deli in downtown Tigard, and then a Goodhouse Insurance Agency in the Triangle. So one in both districts.
Good marketing.
Also the same web business owner. You say community member.
Yes, yes.
Great. So this is most of the TCAC. A couple people couldn't make it tonight, but I'll turn it over now to the chair and vice chair, and they'll go through their report from last year and their strategic plan for the next 2 years.
All right, next slide, please. Okay, for the strategic plan areas of emphasis, nothing noticeable has really changed at a glance. There is only one small change we made from the last time around, and that's we changed the name of housing and shelter. It was originally affordable housing and homelessness, as it more accurately describes what we can do as the TCAC when it comes to addressing issues of affordable housing and homelessness. I want to make it clear that the change of the name, it doesn't get away from the vision of regarding the TCAC on if it accurately has defined what we have recommended for funding for this year. Sorry, I lost my place in my notes. Let me start over again. I want to make it clear the vision regarding the TCAC on this subject has not changed. It has just been more accurately defined as the projects have and recommendations for funding for what this year is. Next slide, please. John, this is you.
So some of the discussions we've had, some of the items we worked on, but also the discussions we've had to bring more businesses to the Triangle, but especially to the downtown area, is looking at the grants. We've also talked about maybe opening up more of the amount we have for grants. Right now, I think we're capped at like 225,000. Those go pretty quick. So there's a lot of businesses that do want to do the facade improvements. Also, we've looked at, it's capped at about 75,000 for a business to open in downtown Tigard. But we start looking at SDCs, looking at build outs and so forth. That doesn't go very far nowadays. So we have had some discussions about looking at maybe waiving SDC so a restaurant or something could open. Also looking at some existing businesses that have wanted to expand into the downtown area where maybe a space open to them becomes available. And start looking at too what we want to bring down there. We have a couple different spots that due to some code complaints have been worked on and could be turned around. So we want to start working on getting more businesses down there and available. But I think really giving a little bit more money towards those businesses to open and talking to those business owners, because some of them we talk to either don't know about it or it's not enough money really to get going and open a business and to get those SECs or run the water lines or the grease traps in there if we want restaurants. So I think that's something we want to look at down the road, is making more funds available, and then we can get more businesses down there.
Thank you. Next slide, please.
Thank you very much. So looking at connectivity and access, again, not a lot has changed there. Our aspirational goals are what they were last year, still looking at trying to get the Hall Boulevard improved and funded and transferred to Tigard ownership. Adequate funding and for 72nd Avenue improvement projects, improved environmental impact and connectivity for pedestrian and media improvements between and within the TIF districts. So accomplishments from last year, the Wayfinding Advisory Committee, we had a representative on that and have selected a preferred design and hopefully that final plan will start to be implemented in this FY. We were briefed on the Downtown Reimagined project and code changing recommendations and adopted related comprehensive plan amendments. Also briefings on 72nd Avenue design and engineering. Hall Boulevard jurisdiction transfer, that was briefed to us several times. Looking at Rock Creek Trail briefings, very informative, and also advocated Triangle Parkland. So 2025, continue to advocate and support for adequate connectivity, access, mobility, and safety-related funding. Actively support ownership of Hall Boulevard transfer to the City of Tigard. Work with TTAC and other city committees on walkability issues between, within and between the two TIF districts, and also continue to receive regular updates on implementation of the downtown wayfinding plan.
Thank you. And next slide. Next slide. Thank you. All right. For 2024, our accomplishments this past year on housing and shelter were quite memorable. We recommended $500,000 for development assistance grants to SEPA Woodland Hearth Project, as well as $200,000 for the development assistance for Just Compassion. Thank you for approving both. I really do appreciate it. Additionally, the Family Promise renovation project is still underway, and a TCAC member is still attending the chart meetings. For the 2025 action plan, we will continue to identify liaisons and attend stakeholder meetings regarding to housing and affordable housing and homelessness, while also growing our list of collaborative partnerships, while continuing to provide development assistance to projects that share the same vision as the TCAC and the TCDA. With that being said, next slide. let us know if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. I really appreciate all the work that you do to help us in the downtown and the two TIF districts in the Triangle. But, first, I guess, does anyone have questions, or do you want me to just kick it off? Okay. Oh.
Go ahead, ma'am. I just have a question.
Yeah.
You always defer to us.
No, I'm fine. I just didn't see anyone jumping, so I was like, I can start asking. What are you excited about? What excites you in the next year?
Oh, Elise, go for it.
Hi. I am very excited about City Council's continued support for affordable housing. The times we're in right now are going to put us in desperate situations, and people are looking to find relief. Every time you, as City Council, are able to assist an affordable housing project, you are helping to build the cash economy that takes place right here locally. And you build that because most of the people in affordable housing, they spend their money in the location where they live. They go to school, recreate, work, and then they come back home. And all the money is spent locally. So that helps our local businesses, it helps our local economy, and it helps a lot of deserving people. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yeah.
Sort of building on that, I am the member that attends the chart meetings. And next month, we are going to be touring Just Compassion as part of our chart meeting. And we are very excited about that and the support that the City of Tigard has offered to Just Compassion to expand. The members from Just Compassion that are on the chart meeting are just out of the world excited about the changes that they're seeing at that facility. I wanted to also let you know that based on our meeting last week, there is a CPA housing forum next March 6th next week. It's called The Growing Housing Crisis for Older Adults. You can register at the Broadway West Theater to attend. And then on March 26th, the Washington County Behavioral Health Resource Network is having a fair at Hillsborough Methodist Church. That's March 26th from 10:30 to 2:30 p.m. and everyone is welcome there.
With that also being said, all the housing projects as well, just all of them being developed, and then we get to tour them afterwards. We then get to directly see the lives that have been impacted, and that's always really touching to see. So more of those, the merrier.
Yeah, I'd be excited to see Hall Boulevard finished finally, and funded and finished. And I'd love to have the overpass opened, since I have to kind of go around, over the 217, and obviously just the completion of 217 and the full opening of the egress into and off of Highway 99, so we can get to into downtown Tigard easier, and into the Tigard Triangle, that area also easier. Those are big things I think that'll help us all. And I think the other one is the wayfinding project. I'm excited about that. I think that's going to help direct traffic throughout the city of Tigard. And probably be even more important if we can get some of that done as we also transition to the downtown parking and jurisdiction of that and implementation of the downtown parking.
Hi, I'm new to the committee, just joined in January, and had been absent from Tigard for about 3 years, and delighted to come back and see the growth in both TIF districts, to see all kinds of different restaurants, carts, businesses joining. It's really great to see the growth, and I think one of the things I'm looking forward to is helping find better pathways for people, because with a lot of affordable housing, there's people that don't have cars, that don't have that ability, and to get projects that will allow us to get sidewalks, especially on 72nd. I know that's going to take a huge grant, but those are areas that it's great to see this growth in affordable housing, and I want to make sure that we're also building infrastructure that allows the people that live in our city to take great advantage of all the growth and all the new businesses. So thank you for letting me be a part of that.
Council President Wolf, your question?
Thank you, Mayor. And that was it was a great question. It was really fun to just see what's in your hearts and minds for this work. So mine, just a couple quick ones. So give me examples of unconventional businesses outside of food carts, because I was like, I don't know what that is. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about what you all are thinking.
John, do you want to go? The business owner?
I know some of the businesses that are looking downtown. I know there's been a butcher that's been trying to find a spot for a while. And the problem he has is either when he finds a spot, it doesn't come available, or the cost to get into there. And so if he's trying to take some of the open spots in like the old sew and vac or the old gym or something like that, if he wants to go in there, the city funding for $75,000, that hardly touches putting in at a grease trap or putting in the water lines or so forth, because you pay the SSEs, you pay the money to put that in. So that's where looking at bumping those amounts up maybe to help someone get in there would make a difference. I know there's a bookstore, I think, looking to come down there. And there's been talks as far as what people would like to see, like a pizza place, ice cream, some of those other places we don't have down there. But a lot of that is restaurant oriented, which means a lot of overhaul for that. Otherwise, if we don't make those changes, then we might have someone come in with a lot more office spaces or so forth. We just recently had Tiger Real Estate that moved out, and Harvest Moon went in there, and that's been a huge, traffic, bring people downtown with that. So we want more experiences like that. I think that a hair salon's opening down in Main Street, and so we have a whole bunch of those. So really, I think the focus is to do what we can to try to get more restaurants. As far as people coming down there and foot traffic around there, it's going to make a difference. So I think that's what we need to look at. And we've also talked about, and I've mentioned, because I've talked to some businesses and they didn't realize until after they've opened their business that they could apply for that money as well. So making that also available, where if there's an application when they come in and fill out their business application, or if they want to come downtown, there's also either a line item or a checkbox on that application so they know they can apply for it. Otherwise, they'd have to go to a different part on the website to even know there's an option to apply for those grants. I've always kind of heard that we'll look on the website, but not always, everyone doesn't always look at that, but they do fill out that initial application, and it'd be good to have at least those options available on there.
Can I ask a follow-up question to Sean? What are the current matching grant amounts for facades and then restaurants for each, the Main Street and then the Tiger Triangle?
Currently, for exterior improvements, facade improvements, $25,000 in both districts, no matter what the business is. And downtown, for restaurants and drinking establishments, the matching grant is $75,000. That recognizes that those are more expensive tenant improvements. And in the Triangle, the tenant improvement is capped at $50,000.
Okay. Has anyone come in, any businesses for facades or wanting those restaurant matching grants and been told there isn't funds?
We still have funds available.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have funds available. Come on down. I wanted that publicly. Anyone have follow-up questions on that? Yeah, Councilor Shaw.
Great, thank you so much, and thanks to the volunteers and also to our chair. And can I see a raise of hands who on the committee or on the board has businesses?
We do have another person
Maybe
as well.
a couple, so it
Actually,
looks like two.
There's three others.
Anchors, so
who
we
are
have three in
business
total.
owners who are-
Okay, thank you, that's
Most of them
helpful.
are currently doing
Three
business
additional.
stuff.
Yeah, that's helpful, just so we know who's on the committee. But also, I know in the past there's been a number of community surveys that also maybe some of those ideas were unconventional, but it's our community members suggesting what they would like to see downtown. So has that been incorporated into the strategic plan? And if so, is there a strategic plan that goes deeper than perhaps the presentation or the 3 slides or the 3 strategic plan page you received? And I have a couple others after that.
I think it's more about providing support for businesses reaching out to us and that are unique, and then we try to service with them. It's more that part is we're trying to assist. It's not usually we're taking the first step. That's what I've been told. Is that correct, Sean?
So the strategic plan was an attachment to the AAS, the 4 pages. And yes, those have informed staff's work plans collaborating with the TDA, especially on the business side and attracting businesses, being more proactive in advertising the grant availability, and giving special attention to these few vacant spaces we have left on Main Street. And the TDA has been stepping up their work on that as well.
Thank you, that's helpful. So do we have a list then of unconventional businesses so we can show that this is what our community members have suggested, this is who's approached the city, this is part of the city's economic development plan, but does it go a little deeper than the 3-page strategic plan, Sean, that you provided?
No, this is the kind of the roadmap, outline / roadmap, but it doesn't get more fine deep grain than that.
We did have someone who helped us one time. You went through a surveying type process of people in the community and business people that gave us a list of ideas. And also TDA collected all kinds of information at the last 3 years of their festivals in the fall. And I've been the one signing people on the whiteboard, the paper. But youth-oriented and family-oriented businesses where they can come in, recreate, eat, and enjoy themselves is one thing we don't have downtown. We have adult-oriented recreation with the Ping Pong Palace and ballroom dancing. But there is nothing really for children other than the park, and the trail. And we don't have an ice cream shop, a simple thing like that. So, these are the things that people have asked for. An Italian restaurant, again, would be lovely. And there are lists available. We just have to dig it out of our records. So, yeah.
We do have Nenny and Phoebes, so let's not forget about them in Main Street.
Another unconventional thought, too, is with the matching funds, is whoever opens a business has to provide those funds first and gets paid back. So if we're looking at more of an equity situation, and depending what kind of business owners we want to look at for opening a business, it's going to be hard. So if they're having to put up $150,000 and then later get paid back that $75,000, that's going to be hard for them, as opposed to they come up with the $75,000 and the city pays that other $75,000. So that may be something to look at too, is if there's a way to change that process to open it up to a lot more people who may not be able to put together all that money up front. In order to pay that amount and then get paid back later, where if it's going to be given to them anyways, why is that money just not paid out to those contractors or to that work?
Sounds like that'd be an excellent suggestion for the 2025 action plan under your equitable business development. And then perhaps just one other final follow-up question, and very much appreciate the concern with regards to housing. I know that's been a big concern and consideration for the city. We also have a number of organizations and some other committees working on it. And so perhaps, Sean, I don't know, or Chair, when you mentioned there's not enough money and you'd like to see more money going to the housing and shelter, is that mean less money goes to kind of our equitable business development, or have you had that discussion?
I think more just in a perfect world, we'd like to see more funding to these services, because all these services that we do provide through the TCAC and recommend are all very valuable. So while there is no change in prioritization on which one should be prioritized more and taking out money from another pot to another, it's more the fact that, like, if we do have extra money, we should maybe consider that.
Okay, and perhaps I'll register just my thoughts, because I think business and economic development is so important for our city, and we haven't, in my opinion, done enough to attract those unconventional and conventional businesses. I would hope that you keep that as, I'm not sure if you can rank your priorities, but keep that as a #1 priority, because we have lots of, and many other committees that are working on our very important housing issue, but I don't think we have as many working on business development. So that's just, as a counselor, I would love to see that happen. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And we have ranked priorities before in the past, and usually business development assistance is near the top, if not the top. So thank you.
We did do an exercise, though, too, that if we had unlimited money, what we'd want to have. And that when the thing did rank high with most people was like a parking structure, which would help then with the economic development and business, people down there. So there were some things we did look at that if we did have kind of unlimited money, one of those things would be for more people to park and be down there and get around, because it's getting harder and harder. Not everything's full down there, so.
We also realize that $8,000 per parking space, it's a very expensive structure to build. And we know that we have to find a way to incorporate both day and night use to make it worthwhile, so.
If you haven't noticed, we talk about parking quite a lot, so.
I wouldn't say that was the top listed project.
And I think
one
that's,
of six.
Yeah, it definitely was, but, yeah. Hey, and I think there's, the wayfinding is another way that there is parking. We just got to let people know where it is and how short a walk it is really to get to downtown. So that's another piece that I think is very critical to getting it solved.
Director Gadusi?
Directors Shaw and Wolf touched on most of what I wanted to ask, but the only thing that I have left is, beyond financial assistance, are there other forms of support that we as City Council can give, primarily for affordable housing developers and houseless programs?
As a prior chart member and the current chart member, we know that you have several agencies all working together to give support to the houseless community. And the best thing that the city has done so far is supporting Just Compassion and the building of the shelter on top of everything else that you're doing, because that's going to provide 60 emergency shelter beds. And that's going to get a lot of people safe shelter, off the street, showers, laundry, all these services that they might not be able to afford otherwise. So thank you.
And in addition to that, joining with Washington County and purchasing the Quality Inn for Family Promise, I tutor there 2 days a week with the children after school at Cocoa Club. And it's both heartwarming and heartbreaking when a student that I've come to know suddenly gets housed, because they are very good at working with the families, helping them write resumes, helping them find places to live, and getting them housed. And it's just been, I fall in love with these kids, and then they get housed and they're gone. But I love that they get housed. It's just such a wonderful facility, and the folks there are so professional at supporting those families. So I'm so proud of Tigard for investing in that facility.
And on that note, if you're asking kind of what the city can do, I know I'm on Family Promise. I'm a board director, and I know that there's, I think, a Metro bond coming up, and I know there's going to be support for that. So that's going to make a difference as far as if we can fund the staff and keep the program going on. So I know we're working on, when that starts coming around, what we want to do for an ask and support. So any support to get that passed and funds to go to there so we can keep funding that program, because it is a great program. If people haven't toured or looked at it, it's a great way for someone to really go through the process, get back into housing, and get back on their feet. And a lot of people don't know it. So sometimes you get the temporary shelters, but this is really great for someone to get back into the program, get medical care, medical insurance, get housing, get into a job. One of the people we had a year or two ago, they had their education, they were looking at starting their own business, but they didn't know how to get medical problems were helping them. So they got into the program, got medical insurance, got daycare for the kids, got training. They were able to start their own business. Now they're out on their own and they're running their own business. So there's a lot of these success stories where it's just not temporarily housing someone, but it's putting them back to where they want and being an active member of society.
Yeah, I'll just add that we're very active. The City of Tigard is part of the Metropolitan Mayors Consortium that has been very, very active in what's going on with the Metro Bond, which isn't a renewal. The proposal would actually be cutting funding. And so we've been very vocally against that, and will continue to be in support of our community services. So that continues, that discussion continues. Everyone has questions, that's awesome. Councilor or Director Hu.
Thank you, Chair Loop. So just to follow up the wayfinding point, last week I did ask our Community Development Director Kirkman whether wayfinding include signage for parking, and she said no. So wayfinding is only for pedestrian and bikes, and I was very concerned because, like you, I think downtown Tigard is lacking signage for cars to find for parking. So if that's something you can advocate also, I would really appreciate it. And going back to parking structure, I the latest figure I heard is a lot more than 8,000. It's 20 to 50,000 a parking lot. So that
50 to
is
60.
a lot for building a parking structure. Yeah, so that's why I think it's more important that we utilize every tool we could to help people find parking in our downtown area, because the data showed that we have plenty of parking. That's the data that was presented to me. So I think so anything we can do to help drivers find parking would be really helpful. And going back to shelter, I think in going back when we were considering the application Just Compassion, there was some hiccup on whether Just Compassion fit the criteria for housing. So I asked the question whether we should develop another set of criteria for providing funding to shelters. And I don't know where that is going. So, and I don't know if we are planning on more shelter in the Triangle or the downtown area. So just to let you know that there was some hiccup for using the affordable housing criteria to apply into shelter applications. So I don't know people's thoughts on that, whether we need a different criteria for shelter. That's all I have. Thank you.
There are many different forms of housing, and residential housing is only one form. And when you look at the many different needs of people in group homes, people who are coming out of rehab and need short-term housing before they can get in, or people coming out of prison, these people who have been in domestic abuse situations and need secure shelter situations. We have people in my church, several families that experienced the extreme weather a year ago. They literally had to leave their apartment. One was completely flooded out, everything destroyed. Another person, violence issue. They had no place to go other than going to a hotel, and that became very expensive for them. Even a shelter situation would have been welcome to them and to their family. Just having a couple of rooms close by, and Family Promise was already booked up. So there was nothing available other than hotels, and they ran up these huge debts. And so now, that's why I advocate that even temporary shelter as a form of housing is necessary, and we need it.
So it sounds like we need to revise the definition in our application. So just a thought. So thank you.
Director Robbins?
Sorry, I will get this. It'll take like a year, but I'll get it. So going back, youth, I'm wondering, there was a question about whether or not you were reaching out to potential businesses versus having supporting people who are coming to you asking for support. And I believe the answer was mainly supporting people who are coming. But in the strategic plan, the page about equitable business development, number 3 does specifically say create a plan and script to contact by phone potential businesses. Do you have a list of businesses, or how do you find potential businesses so it doesn't look like you're playing favorites?
We have a member who is also on the TDA who has essentially been in contact and knows the people who are looking at being in business in Tigard, and he is actively reaching out to them. He's not here today, unfortunately. He was supposed to, but then something came up. But there is someone out there actively reaching out to them. Sean, is that correct? Just want to make sure.
Yeah, Chris Schoen, the owner of Cooper Mountain, who's also on the board of the TDA, really kind of owns this criteria. There was for a while a subcommittee that was working on these. I think that has petered out a little bit, but he has himself been working on these issues, working closely with the TDA. You know, where staff is involved, we're mostly working with the property owners of vacant spaces, letting them know, you know, if you get the right, you know, get a good tenant in here. Well, any tenant that meets the criteria is eligible to apply for the improvement grants, and especially that higher number for eating and drinking establishments encourages that, you know, looking for those tenants. So we only have like three vacant spaces that I'm aware of, maybe 4. But, you know, there's probably a lot of reasons why they might be vacant. Some of it is beyond, you know, we could offer a whole lot of money and it still wouldn't work because of maybe the building space isn't right or the property owner isn't willing to sign a lease that makes sense. So this, you know, this has been kind of a TCAC, TDA focus with staff doing some supporting roles in this. We haven't been actively recruiting specific types of businesses, but we have been responsive to businesses that are looking for, who want to be, specifically want to be in downtown or the Triangle, and we've been assisting them that way, but we haven't been going out and hunting for businesses to bring back.
Director Wolf?
Thank you, Chair. Circling back, and Sean, you kind of touched on this now a couple of times. My second question was, as I read the strategic plan, excited about the work, particularly around the economic development. So my question was, is that directed to staff? And it sounds like it is a blend of volunteers, if you will, or business owners, community members, and staff doing that work. So is it 50-50, 70-30, or I don't know if you can get that granular, but that was my curiosity. Great items identified in the plan, and just wasn't sure how the support structure to make those things happen would roll out. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
And a past member on this committee, Derek, the owner of Senate, had brought up, I think, before talking about also making up a sheet as far as kind of sending it out, where he's been contacted by other cities or so forth, or seeing other cities reaching out to existing businesses to see if they either want to move or open a second location. And so it has been discussed before of making up kind of a hit sheet that says, you know, these are some of the businesses we're looking at, and here's a reason why it's good to move to Tigard. You know, we have our business license goes to basically funding the commercial crimes unit. We don't have that. That's a good selling point. Finding the selling points to bring people here, but having a sheet that's either on the website or something we send out to people or actively do it. So I don't know how active we do that compared to how other cities will do that. But I think he even brought in a sheet one time saying he'd been contacted by another city, and we don't quite go that far as really getting the hit list and contacting existing businesses. So that'd be an option. And I wanted to quickly answer Director Hu with the wayfinding signs. One low-hanging fruit we've talked about a long time is getting the trails lit, with be able to walk and bike into downtown. If we're looking at rather than the $20,000 a spot for a parking structure, if we can make it so people can walk into downtown, bike in there. We have a lot of people within a couple mile distance, but being a business owner downtown, especially in the summer, if it starts getting dark around 7, you see people start leaving around 6 or 6:30 because it's dark and they don't want to go on those trails when they're not lit. But if we can get those trails lit, then they'll be there a lot longer, and especially this season right now where it's dark at 4 or 5, no one's going to be riding or biking down there. So if we really want to take a look at getting people down there, making it walkable and bikeable, I think we need to look at really getting the lighting on those trails sooner than later.
Yeah, that will be in the proposed budget for next year to move that ahead.
So Sean, I'm just going to circle back to my question if you wanted to respond to that. Thanks.
Yeah, like at the January meeting also serves as the TCAC's kind of goal setting meeting. You know, I specifically asked about that. You know, was this meant to refer to staff, the specific one about unconventional business opportunities. I asked, does this refer to staff or does this refer to the commissioners themselves? And the answer was the commissioners for that particular one. A lot of these other ones are, it's both staff moving things ahead, TCAC playing some other role, advocacy role, getting knowledgeable about the programs, the projects, and so in terms of what percent is what, I think this is mostly, this is staff carrying out TCAC, TCDA goals and the budget that is passed by the TCDA Budget Committee and eventually City Council and the TCDA Board, with some activities that are the TCAC themselves leading, advocating for, and in this case of this particular item is they themselves being the lead role in that. And in this case, one particular commissioner who unfortunately wasn't able to be here tonight because of a family issue.
Director Shaw, and any additional questions?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Director Wolf, because I had that question as well. And I'm wondering, just for clarity, maybe too, in the 25-26 strategic plan, if we couldn't delineate sort of who is responsible, and also maybe even call out more clearly what, and I know it was a very strong suggestion from one of your previous members to have KPIs, metrics, and so maybe and I know there's some that say create and another create, but I wonder if we could call that out so at next year we can say, yes, this metric was met, these were not because of these reasons, but I think that'll be helpful too. Thank you.
Director Schlack.
Thank you, Chair. I feel left out not having said anything so far. Just wanted to thank you all for your work for our community, and I look forward as a TCDA director to work with you all over the next couple of years. And I really want to just impress upon everyone how important I think this partnership will be. Thinking back to council goals a week or two ago, economic development, business development were things that were themes that the council kept coming back to, and I think the TCAC will be really important in making sure that those council goals, once they're fully fleshed out, are implemented in a satisfactory way.
Any additional closing thoughts for, Director Hu?
Thank you, Chair. Just follow up on Director Shaw's request. Also, it would be nice to know if you can interview businesses who were deciding between Tiger and another jurisdiction and ended up ultimately at another jurisdiction, and ask them why they didn't come to Tiger, because we don't know what we don't know. So if we have that kind of data, maybe we can improve on whatever they feel we're missing in the Tiger Triangle or the downtown area. So thank you.
One more comment. I'm giving an example about the grocery business. We have been told in the past that grocery stores cannot locate downtown because we don't have enough residents living in the downtown core. And so the same type of businesses that provide food, entertainment, they're going to look at the radius around the city and see, well, my customers usually come from the nearby neighborhoods within this certain radius. And if you look at the aging population and the demographics, how many people have children, et cetera, and where the schools are located and where the people are living, we have to find out if we have the proper demographics for these businesses. So it's just like going back to the grocery store question. Same thing for every other business. Yeah.
Any final thoughts other than thank you so much for your hard work, and we really appreciate everything that you do for us. And if there's something you need from City Council, please let us know. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will reconvene the Tigard City Council. The next item on the agenda is a report and policy review on the street maintenance fee. We have Principal Engineer George and Kittleson Consultant Tony Roos to present the item, and others. Hi, Joe.
Hey, good evening, Council. Joe Wisniewski, City Engineer. I'm here with Kittleson and Associates, Tony Roos, along with Project Manager Nicole George to talk about our street maintenance fee, hopefully which will lead to a methodology update. We expect to be back at least 2, if not 3 times through a series of meetings here leading up to the adoption of a new methodology. So next slide, please. So I'll give a little background. The current methodology was adopted in 2010, and it has the fees associated with parking spaces. This methodology is currently outdated, primarily because of the parking minimums no longer applying to the city, and because of that, it makes it hard to audit the program and really apply the street maintenance fee methodology to the residential properties and commercial properties. And also previous council, prior to all of you, have requested staff to explore trip generation based methodology for our street maintenance fee. Next slide. I just want to point out that on January 14th, you all received an update from Project Manager Nicole George on our pavement management program. And the street maintenance fee is what is the funding source for that program. Street maintenance fee does apply to some of our streets division as well for maintenance they perform, but it primarily is what we rely on for completing pavement management. And that is where we have our goal of maintaining the PCI of 80, and I believe everybody is very proud that we continue to meet that goal. So, next slide. So what is the current methodology? It's not just simply based on the number of parking spaces. We do want to point out that what is currently charged is for residents, it's based on per unit. So every residential property is charged the same rate. In non-residential, it is based on per parking stalls. And then another unique one is gas stations. They're charged based on the pump, the fuel station or the fuel pump. Depending on how many they have. Next slide, please. So at this point, we want to talk about a couple different modes or models of street maintenance fee calculation, and I would like to turn it over to Tony to dive into the weeds a little bit.
You took the easy ones.
I did.
Well, thank you for having me tonight. It's been fun to work with Nicole and the team on trying to figure out this process. When we think about converting to a trip-based model, there's really 4 different types that you can look at, and they're used throughout the state. All 4 different models are used throughout the state by different agencies, local and other cities. The flat fee model is you look across the entire city and every tax lot gets the same fee. Residential to Costco, same whatever that number is to get to the amount of money Nicole needs to maintain our roads. The next step up as we go to the right just increases the complexity of how the city has to manage the fee. So the next step is a flat fee within class where you put all the different types of trip generators, the difference of a Costco versus a gas station versus a 7-Eleven. They all have different rates at which they generate traffic. And it's also based on the square footage of the buildings. So in a flat fee model, you disregard the square footage of the building and you just put them in by the type of class, the generation, the density of trips, and into 6, 7, 8 buckets and charge the buckets, each bucket a different rate to get to the same number that Nicole needs to maintain the roads. The more equitable way to look at this is the trip generation model, where you actually look at the trips generated by the individual lots, the individual businesses and homes. Homes and residents, they all generate about 10 trips a day. Homes generate about 10 trips a day. It's not you going in and out of your house. It is the Amazon delivery, the garbage truck that comes by on Wednesdays or Thursdays, whatever day it comes by on. So everything that is associated with your house is counted in that trip count for the daily charge, the daily amount of trips you generate. But a variable fee within class looks at those same buckets, but assigns a trip generation number that is appropriate to the size of the building. A bodega of 4,000 square feet has the same ITE code as a Fred Meyer's does, but the bodega is not going to generate the same amount of trips as Fred Meyer's. So their rate, their total fee is going to be proportionate to the amount of trips they generate. And then the full trip generation is every lot gets its own trip fee and trip generation calculation, which is just a very complex method for staff to maintain that database. So next slide, please. So why change to a trip generation model? It closer represents the use and the damage to our roadways. We want to make sure we're accounting for all the trips, freight, and cars that are damaging our pavements. It's a lot fairer and equitable in applying the fees because the people paying the fees are the ones that are generating the damage to the roadways. It accounts for the increase in the amount of delivery trips. You know, pre-COVID, how many Amazon trucks did you see on your roads versus now? And then it accounts for the trips, as Joe mentioned, on properties that have zero parking requirements. They're still generating trips. The postmaster's still going there. Amazon, food delivery, everybody's still going to those homes, but they're not paying into maintaining the roadways, what their use is damaging them. So the recommendation from an equity and ease, that nice blend of equity and ease between what staff has to maintain and the equity of spreading the cost out to the actual people that are hurting the road, damaging the roads by use, is the variable fee within class. And it's a really pretty graphic, I think. Oh, next slide, please. But there's really no clean and easy way to explain what's happening here. We calculate all the trips in the city, and for every tax lot on the ITE code that gets assigned, ITE has 960 different codes for different things, from everything from a 7-Eleven to a food cart pod to a warehouse and industrial areas. It's just, we have to go around and assign every tax lot what their ITE code is based on the square footage and put them in the total trips generated in the city. And then we rank those by the density of which they accumulate the trips. So some buildings, some IT codes are 1 trip per day, others are 900 trips a day. And we rank them in that order, and then take the number of buckets we're gonna have and put them in the lowest density, and a quarter of the trips, or in this case, a fifth of the trips will go in the first bucket, the next fifth in the second bucket, and so on and so forth. And we assign a rate to each of those buckets. It's different. It's a lower rate for the lower generation, higher rate for the higher generation, and everybody gets a bill based on that. Then staff can maintain this database a lot easier when new business come on, and it's more audible in the future to say business has changed, but it didn't really update on the records. So next slide. So the process to change, this is a very complex, more depth is required than what we can go through in a 15-minute presentation to council. We'd recommend a working group be established to really dive in deep to the details and understanding that, and then a couple public meetings to get the community feedback on what the change is. And then come back to council with a recommendation of what the ordinance change would be and how that would be implemented across the city. And the stakeholder working group we have there, we want a broad cross-section of businesses to represent. This go around, the idea is to keep the residential rate the same as it is currently, and really just overhaul how the businesses and the non-residentials are being charged. So there's no residents listed on the stakeholder member type. This is just focusing on the businesses and the non-residential churches, schools, retirement communities, hospital, those types of different uses that might see their bill changed. Next slide. I think this one's you. It's another easy one.
So what we're looking for tonight is, one, just want to check in to see if we are going down the right path towards this trip generation model. It is widely used in the region. I believe Hillsborough, Tualatin, Lake Oswego, just to name a few. I know there's a list of neighboring jurisdictions that follow this model as well. So a question for council tonight is, I know you had a 15-minute tip of the iceberg on this, but we want to check in that it seems like we're going down that right path, because it has been previous direction from council, so we want to check in with the current. And then, do you also support the proposed idea of utilizing a working group to, as like a sounding board, and provide feedback to staff that we ultimately bring back to council? And then, are there any questions that council has about street maintenance fee that we should explore before we come back for another update? So, Mayor, I ask if there's any questions for us tonight or any direction.
Yeah, Councilor Schock.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you all for the presentation. This is a really interesting topic for me. I have two minds on this. There's the senior product analyst side of me that says, this is really cool. I really like all the math and data that goes into this. And then there's City Councilor Jake that looks at this and gets concerned about trying to implement a structure that would be really complicated offhand to trying to explain to residents. One of the concerns I had that I think you all touched on would be who is getting charged at different rates. When I was doing my research, I found Lake Oswego, for instance. I saw that even though we're looking at they are looking at trip generation as the basis for their fee, all residential units are treated the same, or at least single family, I believe, versus multifamily, which is fair. And that would be my red line, is that we would need to make sure that residential or residents all are treated equally in there, and that the fairness and equity is really about different use cases, single family versus multifamily versus different forms of commercial and non-residential zoning. So it sounds like that's where you all are going, but that's just my 2 cents there, and I fully support the working group because I think we need to be really consultative when it comes to asking for money from the community, as we are with our fees. The council has expressed a lot of concerns over time around cost of living, and that's always come up when other fee increases have emerged. So I think a working group would help address some of those concerns.
Yeah, I appreciate that feedback. And just to address Jake, the analyst side of it, I believe during the data cleanup, there was over 20,000 tax lots or water meter data points that Tony and his group had to comb through to prepare us for even the stage we're in today. So there's plenty of data there. Happy to share it with you.
I'm very jealous right now. That sounds actually really fun, and my colleagues know I'm not joking when I say that.
Councilor Gadusi.
Thank you again. I have two things. One, I have a sort of different view in terms of residential fees, and I was thinking, if we do extend towards residential fees overall, are we going to actually do a tiered system where we have like single family homes versus multifamily apartments versus like senior housing and retirement homes, just because it seems like they would have lower trip generation. Obviously, I don't know off the top, but then the second part of that is, as we do implement on the business side, are we going to cap a year-over-year increase to the businesses transitioning?
So the first part there about residential, all single-family residential would have the same rate. As you get into multifamily or like larger apartments, I believe they will have a different trip gen. So in a way, yes, it's tiered. And then the cap, or how we implement this as part of rolling out the ordinance, that is direction that council can give on setting those tiers or setting those rates. So we will have that as part of our future conversations.
Councillor Hu?
Thank you, Mayor. Just going back to the working group requirement or concept, I'm a little confused because you mentioned that there are several surrounding cities already using this use model. I understand we want to achieve a balance between equity and ease of administration, but if there are other cities who are already having this kind of system, why do we need to reinvent the wheel and having a workshop? I'm just help me understand why we need to dive in this deeply, because your time, staff time is valuable. So I don't want you to spend time on something that we could just analyze other cities, what other cities have done. So please help me understand.
Yeah, I appreciate the comment about staff time. I think a big part of the working group is to help formulate the number of buckets and really the methodology of how fine we should slice how we implement this. So 4 buckets, 5 buckets, 7, that's really hard to really come up with right now without having that engagement opportunity with the various stakeholders that are directly impacted by this. So we are balancing out, looking at what other agencies have already tested and implemented and bringing that into our process and having the community provide feedback on we're kind of going down the path of we want this variable fee within fixed class or trip gen, and have them help us define then within that methodology the bucket system.
I think we still have to figure out what's right for Tigard, right? As far as we're not the same city as like Oswego, we have different offerings and all those sorts of things. So I would say I appreciate that they've looked at it, but if it helps you to understand, I think we have to figure out what the specific buckets for Tigard is.
Okay.
Councillor Shaw?
Thank you. Really appreciate the presentation. My mind goes, unlike an analyst, it goes to what you described sounds like a hiring an HR nightmare because you need so many staff to have to figure out all those different buckets. And so I see it as it may be different, that your time is also valuable, and do we really want you working on 960 up to 20,000 different codes unless the presentation with the 5 buckets, is it going down to just 5 buckets and not 960? And I look at Public Works Project Manager George thinking, I think she's one person doing this job. So just my thoughts. Then the question, and recognizing that LO and Tualatin and Hillsborough are different, have some different size. But have you looked at also staffing? Because we can talk about equity all day, but if you need to hire 25 staff to develop this system, it probably isn't going to make financial sense or even equitable sense. So is that something you're also factoring into this?
So I'll start, and then maybe Tony or Nicole can talk about the real world implementation side of once the buckets are established. So the idea of the buckets is once we determine how many buckets or categories we're going to utilize, each one of them would have a range of those trip generation codes assigned to it. And so when a new business would come in through most likely their business license process or a permitting process, a trip gen rate would be assigned to that property, and then it would go into that bucket. So I believe the implementation side of it, once this is all put in place, won't be a major burden on staff. And that's why we want to make sure we get this right today or during this update, so that we properly set up the buckets. I don't know if there's any more.
Currently, when a development comes in, the number of parking spots, or a business comes in, the number of parking spots goes to our finance crew, and that's how the street maintenance fee is billed. So you're just replacing that with an ITE code. And so, with the 900 and something out there, there really is a code for every single thought that somebody could make in a business. But I honestly think that'd probably be simpler and make more sense. As far as my time, I started in Tigard in 2019, and this was a concern then. And Tony's implemented this stuff personally with his team to Newburgh, and that's why I reached out to him, and we've been partnering on this. And so we've already kind of run scenarios and thought through a lot of things. And so as far as staff, I think once the working group can get the buckets, I don't think it's going to be, and maybe Tony hasn't told me what I don't know, but I think it's doable, and I think it's important to get the code right. So
I would just add that the hard lift is the upfront work, the data analytics, to get everybody in the right bucket and the right code, and tying their property to the water meter, to the bill that goes out, the municipal services bill, is really the hard challenge we have, because they're not always the same. And so there's some upfront logistics to get it all set, but once it's set, it's only things that change that have to be updated on a regular basis or audited by Nicole and the team.
Can I just add that since you've said that, I actually think that we would get an incredible amount of data on what businesses are in Tigard simply by this exercise as well. And to be able to pull that, right, of like how many, 7-Elevens are there or whatever it is in this specific area. I think it pertains exactly to the conversation also we just had about economic development and where are our holes and our gaps. So that was just an interesting tie-in and musings. Council President Wolf?
Thank you, Mayor. And yeah, I think I have a different lens. I think I'm kind of excited, and this is probably me being naive about the data, but I have this like massive cloud, and as the structures and the systems come into play, that it just kind of falls into these buckets, leveraging your expertise, certainly, and Tony, yours, right, to help like sort. And then I'm excited for the committee to kind of help have those rich conversations. And I'm always a champion of when you have a committee that's, knowledgeable, excited, that they also become this group that can help talk about why this is important, how it's impactful, how this is good for Tigard. And I think you learn what you didn't think you'd learn from these conversations. And so I'm excited to actually, I hope this is a work session so that even council can not get in the weeds to the degree of the committee, but learn a little bit more about the thought process. And the only other comment I had is residents are listed as a stakeholder member type. And even if the rate doesn't change for residents, it's learning, sharing, and maybe if that makes sense to have one that, kind of represents that group. I'm, micromanaging, just saying yes, yay, go forward. I think it's a great idea, and it's always important to engage our constituents in these conversations. So thank you.
Councillor Slack?
Thank you, Mayor, and I'd like to thank Councillor Hu and Councillor Shaw for their questions and comments. I realized one of the things I wrote down that I forgot to ask earlier is along the same lines. Would there be any additional cost to the city to have this working group? The reason I ask is because I've just gotten in the habit since the Climate Change Task Force to make sure I ask how much that community working groups will cost the city, if it's going to be an additional cost or not.
That's a good question. So I think the cost relative to the project would be very minor for a few committee meetings. Typically, a working group meeting like this, if we have to schedule it after hours, there might be refreshments provided or something like that. So there will be some expense. Our staff time is forecasted. I don't see it impacting our staff time negatively. So I would say it's a relatively small impact to the budget, but I don't have that quantified at this point.
Yep, no worries. Just wanted to sort of get an idea there. And also, we talked a little bit about ongoing maintenance of this because, of course, all of this is sort of for a big launch of here are the new rates and here's all the educational material around it. What level of effort do you all see this actually having on our team to sort of have ongoing maintenance of this sort of new data source, this new process, and so on? I understand that we're going to make code changes and those are going to be the rates, but making sure that we're applying those correctly is going to be a non-trivial amount of work going forward.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
So we've been meeting with finance and talking about what that would look like. It'd be quite a bit different in how they assign street maintenance fee right now. We've already been working with finance. Again, this was a couple years ago when we pulled all the water meters, and so we'd have to probably go back through that database, make sure we didn't miss anything that's been added or changed in the last 2 years, to get that data set back up.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilors. My name is Eric King, Finance Director for the city. And I do have a PowerPoint slide. I'll maybe take a few minutes to pause for the PowerPoint slide. While that's getting set up, I can just give a preview. So tonight I'm here to provide some information and provide an update to on the city's transient lodging tax, which is also commonly referred to as TLT. You'll hear that referred to a lot during the Budget Committee. At the end of my presentation, the objective of this topic is to start the conversation and then receive direction from council on the next steps on programming the transient lodging tax. I'm still not seeing a PowerPoint slide. Well, I can still continue on while they're working on the PowerPoint slide. So you hopefully you have the deck in front of you so you can refer to that. But for the community that's watching and tuning in, so the transient lodging tax is a 2.5% tax that is imposed on room rates that are paid by customers that are booking lodging at hotels and motels within the city. The tax was adopted by City Council back in 2017 by a unanimous vote of council. And then prior to 2017, the city spent about a year exploring the transient lodging tax. This included a year of public engagement that included engaging the business community. And the response from the business community was overall very supportive, including from the Tiger Chamber of Commerce, the Tiger Downtown Alliance, with the idea that the intent of the tax was to draw in tourism to stimulate the local economy. Next slide, please. And so now I want to share some information on how the transient lodging tax can be used based on the state statute. So referencing above right there, the transient lodging tax is primarily split into two different buckets. 30% of the funds can be used for general operations, for which the city has been using since the tax was first adopted, so that 30% amount gets transferred to the general fund for general operating use. And then the other remaining 70% of the funds must be for tourism-related purposes. Next slide, please. So for tourism-related purposes, state statute defines that as promotion or tourism-related facilities, or to finance debt for tourism-related facilities. So at a high level, that essentially means that the transient lodging tax can be used to finance or outright purchase a facility that promotes tourism. Next slide, please. And then so ORS also further defines what tourism means by providing a description of tourist. So I've highlighted some two key points right there. So it summarizes it as an activity that draws in a person from more than 50 miles from their community of residence, or promotes an overnight stay at a hotel. Next slide, please. And so these are two different categories that demonstrates what tourism promotion means or what a tourism-related facility is. I won't go in each these different categories, but these are examples that are straight out of the state statute. They provide some examples of what a tourism-related promotion or facility is. I'd say one of the common things that we've seen, and I'll talk about this in a later slide, the conference center or convention center, those are the most commonly used for a facility. And then for tourism promotion, that can include things like a visitor center, partnering with the Chamber of Commerce. Also, you'll see a lot of TV advertisements for things like in Bend, Oregon, you've probably seen some of those advertisements. That's another common use of the TLT funds. Next slide, please. So back in 2019, Eco Northwest published a report, and this was published for the Oregon Tourism Commission, which is also known as Travel Oregon, which is an independent or semi-independent state agency. One of the areas that I would focus your attention on for this diagram, so this is a survey result of how the TLT funds were used across the state. One of the common themes that you'll see on this graph right here is the tourism-related facilities and tourism promotion are the two common areas of how the TLT funds have been used. And then just to cite some examples of what neighboring cities do, we see that in the city of Sherwood, in their budget, they have a 3% transient lodging tax, and they use their funds to support their arts commission, which uses primarily focuses on their art facility. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head. The city of Beaverton, they have a 4% TLT tax, and then they use their funds to fund the Beaverton Center for the Arts. The city of Hillsborough has a 3% tax, and then they use their funds for their event and conference center, and then they're also using it to fund their new Hillsborough Hops ballpark. Next slide, please. And so here on this slide, this is how the city is planning on using their TLT funds in the current fiscal year. And so you can see up there, just under 200,000. That is that 30% bucket for general operation. So that is a transfer to the general fund. There's 94,000 budgeted for community events grants, and that's the part of the budget subcommittee process of selecting grants for community events. And then 100,000 for the 4th of July drone show. And just as a refresher, that is the drone show used to be, or the fireworks show is now a drone show, and we took that on last year after Mr. Ron retired from providing that service. Next slide, please. The city started collecting transient lodging tax starting in fiscal year 2019, even though the ordinance was passed in 2017. Since the tax was first imposed, we went through a few turbulent times. You can see in that graph right there, fiscal year 20, 21, 22, those are the COVID years, where there was a lot less use of hotels. And so you saw a dip in those 3 years. However, in the last 2 years, we've recovered back to where we kind of expected and initially forecasted the TLT would land. I think when the ordinance was first passed, the estimate came in just under 700,000, and so we're fairly close to where it was initially forecasted. And as of the current fiscal year, our fund balance is currently at $2.2 million, and I'll touch on a future slide in just a second on how we've accumulated that fund balance. Next slide, please. So this is just a comparison chart of where Tigard lands in comparison to the region on the TLT tax. So as you can see, Tigard is amongst the lowest in the region, tied with Forest Grove and Tualatin on the tax rate. Next slide, please. And so this slide right here is just meant to be an example and an estimate of what things will look like if city were to pursue a bond with the TLT funds. So at its current operating levels, that's factoring in continuing with the grant program, the drone show, and also paying for the general operations. The city could issue bonds somewhere in the ballpark of $6 to $7 million. And in total, the total amount of capital could land somewhere between $8.7 and $9.2 million with the bond issuance using that $2.2 million of fund balance. Now this number could change on a variety of different factors, interest rates, whether or not the city chose to not continue with the grant program or the drone show, or if, and then things like duration on the financing terms. So there's quite a bit of range on how this number could change. Next slide, please. And then so today we're here to get some guidance from council. So on an earlier slide, I did mention how we accumulated a fund balance of $2.2 million today. So going back to 2018, at one point in time, City Council gave guidance to staff to deliberate on the use of TLT dollars. They had asked the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board to propose some ideas on how to use the TLT dollars. And so one of the proposals that was received at the time was to invest in a regional sports facility. And that is something that you'll see in our published budget book. That was a proposal that came out one time. However, that idea has become unfeasible as the potential identified site is not a viable location. Therefore, there hasn't been a lot of work to advance that vision that was brought forward back in 2018. And so the fund balance has accumulated, and thus far has been primarily used to fund the grant program. So today, the two questions that we're asking council is, should the city continue the path of mostly expending the funds on the grant program as presented in an earlier slide, or should the city explore other applicable uses of transient logic tax funds? And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Can you put that slide back up for the policy considerations? Go back one slide. Just so we have, yep, there you go. Thank you. So we have answers. Does anyone have any initial, Councilor Gadusi, you haven't gone first yet today.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of questions. One, have we thought about increasing the TLT rates to be more consistent with surrounding communities?
From my recollection, that hasn't been brought forward as a proposal. You know, the council has that discretion if they so choose.
Thank you. Another one. Do we have a overall 3 to 5 year tourism strategy to help guide any sort of future investment? It's hard to say where we should direct our funds if I don't know where we as a city are going. And I know the chamber has some, direction, but do we have as a city have an overall goal? Because I think that'll help guide where, grants versus other places for the TLT funds.
For my recollection, there isn't a tourism-specific strategy that we've discussed. I think this is one of the first topics of this discussion we've had since my time with the city.
I would say I think it's actually the first time I've talked about it in 6.5 years. If that helps. Or maybe it doesn't. Any additional questions? Councilor Shack?
Thank you, Mayor. One question regarding the transient lodging tax bond, and maybe it's just because it's 8 o'clock and I'm not quite wrapping my head around it. Would that bond be subject to the same limitations that the current dollars are subject to, or would the bond be a way of making those dollars more flexible for other uses?
All the restrictions would still apply with the bond issuance. It would have to be used for tourism-related facilities.
Okay. Yeah, I think I agree with Councilor Gadusi about having a more fleshed out strategy when it comes to tourism, because I've been on, that grant subcommittee, I think 3 of the last 4 years that I've been involved, volunteering for the city. And I would hate to lose those dollars for grants, because that is a sizable chunk of our budget for community event grants. The other part of me looks at this and thinks that, we're levying a tax, and we don't have a really great way to spend that money, especially since it's super limited, and that just feels inefficient to me. And if we're not going to find a way to other applicable uses for these funds, then I think we would need to reconsider the rate it's levied at, or if we need that tax levied at all, if we don't have a great way for it to go. I mean, we just had a street maintenance fee conversation. I can explain to a community member why we need those dollars, where they're going, and how it benefits them. This one is harder for me to make that case for with the current information that we have.
If I could respond to that comment, one of the things I would highlight about the transient lodging tax that is being utilized today, the 30% that's used for general operations, that is a true reflection of a resource need that the city has, as there are tourists that do come into the city. We do have a hotel that is in the Washington Square area that draws a tremendous amount of traffic that does have direct impact to city services. That being said, the 70% is where things get a little tricky, and based on a moratorium that was passed in 2003 really created some of these restrictions on how the TLT funds can be spent.
I will pop in. One of the topics in the state legislature is an expansion of uses, and it's really coming from the coastal towns that truly are tourist towns that would like to be able to use some of their funds on public safety. And so we as Tigard haven't really weighed in. Using funds in that way has not been our priority, but understand that other cities would like to use it that way. So I just also wanted to add that. I have no idea how it's sitting or if it is going forward or if it's dead or whatever it is, but it is always a topic of discussion on the LOC General Policy Committee. Council President Wolf.
Thank you, Mayor. So thank you, Eric. It was a great conversation. A number of ideas. So it's someone that is staying at an overnight facility that pays the tax, right? So, so what I'm thinking is, who does this impact, right? It's those that come in. So I'm curious about whether a rate increase would make sense. I too am hesitant if we get back up to 750,000 to stop funding our grant recipients, because they really are pulling in tourists that maybe then go to another restaurant downtown and pick something up. So maybe I'm wanting the perfect world where we have an exploration of what that bonding could bring in, what makes sense for Tigard, but still have a funding stream that supports the chamber, our theater groups that help drive folks into Tigard. So I'm very interested in staff exploring our options deeper and bringing that back so we could have a really exciting conversation about what our options are.
Councilor Robbins.
Thank you, Mayor. It's on, promise. First, I just wanted to clarify that my understanding of reading this is that the potential for a bond and or looking for other sources to spend the money on is not taking money away from the community grants. Is that correct? Because we already spent that, but it's not very much of what we bring in overall. Is that correct?
So that slide that I had right before this one right here on the $6 to $8 million, I think that was the number I said, for bond issuance, that is assuming that we keep at the current level of grants. And so holding that flat.
Right, so you are not suggesting at this point discontinuing any of those grants. It's just using the extra money because right now we aren't using all the money that we bring in every year.
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay. And then do you have ideas for how we would spend this money? I mean, this conversation is coming from somewhere, so I'm wondering, do you have recommendations at this point, or am I putting you too much on the spot?
I would just add, it's not that we weren't using this money or that we decided we had nothing to spend on. The city was actively saving these funds in anticipation of using it for sports facilities at a property we owned. So I don't want everyone to think, well, we have this excess money, we don't need what we have. I think what I am hearing so far is a request for a more strategic plan on the reserve dollars we have and potential dollars we could bond in the future. If that helps this conversation, I want to level set us on why we have that 2.2 million.
So I do understand.
Okay.
That I missed. Okay. I do understand that the history. It was on. Can you just use I do understand that. I appreciate the history. I just wanted to clarify for myself that he wasn't asking that we stop spending money on the community grants portion, but that we have the extra money that we were saving and what other ideas we could have to use for that.
Yeah.
And Director Robbins, I guess I'm probably a little bit sensitive to that funding stream because just last year we expanded it quite a bit. for the funding that went to those programs. So that was probably, is like, we're not going to pull that back, is probably because that's a recent expansion, if that makes sense. So,
I mean, preview, I'm going to propose we actually expand the money that we give, but I mean, I will wait my turn. Councilor Robbins, do you have any additional questions?
Finance Director Kang didn't have a chance to answer my question about any ideas. I feel like it's difficult. Yes, I want to expand and explore options, but I don't know what a possibility would be. And so I'm curious if anyone has any ideas in the city staff that is prompting this.
I'd say it's still difficult for me to come up with ideas on the spot, but there are definitely different feedback that we've heard from the community as far as some of the needs. The common, I would say the number one common theme that we've heard, a community space is a common concern that I think we've heard time and time again, but we also have other facility challenges across the city. And so it would be difficult for me to prioritize one over the other, especially during the situation we're in today on facilities. That being said, the use of the TLT funds for the drone show, I mean, that is a new program that was added last year. And I believe that is going to be coming back to council at a future time.
Next week.
Next week, yes, for deliberation. Really, what I'm hearing from council is, or what I was hoping to get from council for feedback is just general direction, and happy to come back again based on the feedback we're hearing. One of the comments that one of the feedback I'm getting right now is coming back with some sort of strategy and proposal to react to, so that council can weigh some of their options.
Councilor Hu? We still have a couple more questions.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, it's just following on Mayor Loop's question about the grant. I was not on the subcommittee, so did any applicant get turned down for the grant last year?
I might call on.
They got like a third funded of what they asked for.
A third?
Yeah.
Okay, so that we could have given more if.
So that, so the grant program has three different funding sources. So the community events, there weren't any grants turned down for the community events. Those were all fully funded. The areas that we were funding was turned down was the social services programs and the funding applications that were using the marijuana tax dollars and the general fund dollars.
Okay, so I will definitely want to keep the grant program and explore possibly expanding it and giving more to community member. And so the second question is, does the statute have any means tests for how to determine a trip require the person to travel more than 50 miles? How do you determine whether something will attract somebody from 50 miles away?
Yeah, so that is actually a very common challenge that every city is having in determining that. One of the means tests that we've implemented at the city is on the grant application. We specifically ask the question, is your event intended to draw in an audience from over 50 miles? And so it's fairly clear cut for us making that determination. And we do provide an explanation of why we ask that question too.
Okay, but how about for city facility? How do we know if we build something it will attract? Do we just say yes, it will attract somebody from 50 miles away and then say let's build it?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I think on slide number, it's in an earlier slide where we have the comparison of two uses. Is
Conference center, convention center, visitor information center.
On slide 6.
And the second one is other improved real property that has useful life 10 more years and has a substantial purpose of supporting tourism and accommodate.
Yeah.
Seems pretty loosey-goosey to me. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think it goes back to, right, like the ball fields and a sports facility that would hold tournaments. Because we're short ball fields in the region, and that would be paid for because it would host tournaments and bring people in from across the state or the region.
Or
Like a convention center.
or we
yeah.
can build a park that has a huge structure that's uncommon, and we can just say, hey.
I feel like that's a stretch, but I mean, if you feel
Well,
like
if
you
I
have
a
the
big
argument.
I don't know. We have a huge, I don't know, timberjack, the big statue of, I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, all right. So I'm getting off track. So just to also follow up on Mayor Loop's mention of House Bill 3556, launching tax flexibility, it has been assigned to a committee, but no hearing has been scheduled. So don't know where that's going.
So if I can answer your question on the use for a facility, the common means test that's used is really more of a political one. If the city were to choose to invest the funds into a facility using TLT dollars, and it clearly was not a tourism-related facilities, that could start, the hotel lobby coming in for public comment, filing a complaint with the state. That's kind of the risk that you run into on the use of the funds. That being said, it is a legal gray area. I've had many conversations with City Attorney Rahala on this, and it is very gray area.
Councilor Shaw?
Thank you, Mayor. And going back in time, I do remember when we were discussing the initial drone show versus fireworks that we did talk about if there was a strategy on community events, because then we were trying to figure out how much money we put to that activity and discovered we didn't have a strategy, so we did actually talk about it, but apparently it's dropped off the radar. But question for you, Finance Director King, it was slide, I think it's 8, that has $100K for the 4th of July drone show. And we were reviewing the City of Tigard adopted budget FY 24-25, and out of the transient lodging tax, it said it was $10,000.
The budget was set before we made the decision, I think.
So
Yeah.
this needs to be updated, or?
Well, it was paid directly out of transient lodging taxes. It
Yeah.
wasn't paid out of the grants for transient lodging taxes.
Oh, okay.
Which
Got
I
it.
think
Okay.
technically are
Technically,
two different budgets.
Thank you. That's
Yep.
helpful. 2 different buckets. Okay. Thank you. The mayor
Yeah.
answered my question.
So one of the confusing parts of the grant program is that it starts at the beginning of the year. So in that budget year, we paid for the event that was happening that fiscal year, and then the drone show, I think, was paid, and we had a supplemental budget request for the $80,000 that was used last year for the drone show in the same fiscal year.
Rob?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The 7 of you are residents, but something you might want to consider is either focus groups professionally done and or polling with it, and ask residents what they would like to see, because it may also affect the percentage you might want to increase it to if you did. I mean, that's something to consider. There may be something, I don't know, you've talked about a lot of things tonight, so you probably haven't missed much, but you could get a feel for what people may really want, or even something that hadn't been thought of.
Okay, my turn. I love the idea of us asking the community, finding out perhaps what they want, because I also sit and look at capital of $9 million, and I'm like, it doesn't feel like we could actually get that much with $9 million as far as a facility or a building that would truly serve its purpose. So I would like to understand, and if council is in agreement, direct to do a survey and to have some help figuring out from the community perhaps what they want, which also may piggyback into a rate study of, depending upon what we're interested in, what would be the rate options to get us there. And then I would like to propose, knowing that we have extra dollars, to increase the community grants. I think that The arts are particularly going to be attacked in the next couple of years, and they're really important fabrics of our community that bring people together. And if there's a way to perhaps continue to support Broadway Rose or Mask and Mirrors, if that qualifies under it, but overall increasing it, because every time I talk to community members, one of their favorite things about Tigard is all of the fun stuff that we do. So if there's staff capacity, maybe it's adding an additional event. I know we're going to have a more robust discussion next week, but what I heard from community members as far as the 4th of July, they'd actually, I think, like to see an all-day festival, something that they can hang out with, and perhaps, you know, the fireworks or the drones are the end and not just the thing that they show up for, because they said they got in early and there wasn't a ton to do. So having it turn into more of a festival, which may require more transient lodging tax dollars, because we know people drove in from the entire region, and that's absolutely what these dollars are for. So that would be my proposal, to make sure that our events are fully funded and robust, and perhaps see if we should have another event to step up 4th of July, which we'll probably have a more robust discussion on in general, and then really have a thoughtful process about what does the community want and what is the tax rate that could help us get there. Councilor Shack?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I fully support your proposal. I think, you know, sort of to go back to my comments, my big pain point is just seeing that we have a balance of, was it $3.2 million, and it's, was it? 2.2, okay. Where we just don't have a really clear path forward because of these limitations around it. So I fully support that proposal and trying to find ways to leverage those tax dollars.
Or perhaps asking, is there a one-time way that we can fund something that someone is asking for? I mean, Mask and Mirrors was asking about, they really want a building, right? Maybe it's, so I don't know. I think there could be a wide variety of questions of capital investment that could provide benefit for a lot of these things as well. And maybe it's a mix of all of the above. We increase, anyway. Okay, Councilor Gadusi.
Thank you. Although I really love the grants, one of my concerns with it is there may be limited direct return on investment. So although it does help boost local culture and everything, it may not drive that sustained tourism growth that was intended with the transient lodging tax. So something like the community center, something like creating that sort of third space might be that secondary use that we're looking at. So I overall see sort of this missed opportunity for a strategic investment if we were to increase the grant funding.
Which could also happen with increasing the tax rate, depending upon what we're looking at, I think. But I think we're looking for more information to make a better decision. Yeah, Councilor Robbins?
I have one last question, or consideration, perhaps, and maybe not, rather than increasing our transient lodging tax rate, have we capitalized on the fact that we are 3.5% less than our neighbor Portland that's just a few miles down the road? That's not something that you could really put on Expedia, but it's something that for the industry, the travel industry, to spread the word, say, hey, you know, your clients could save 3.5% if they stay in Tigard. That is something that we could, I think, with these funds, do some sort of ad campaign or blanketing thing to the industry and bring more business people into our hotels here.
Eric, do you feel like you have the guidance you need? Do you have more than you bargained for?
I am going to just try to recap what I've heard and make sure I'm capturing the feedback correctly. So one common theme that I'm hearing is coming back and first asking the community what they would like to see with the use of the TLT dollars, bringing forward some proposals on a strategy on the use of the TLT dollars, and in combination of the two, exploring what it would look like if we were, based on the results of what we're hearing from the community, what could that look like from a tax rate standpoint. Additionally, looking at there's some conversation on expanding the community events grant program, and then Am I missing anything?
Council President Wolf?
So, I don't think you did, Eric. The only thing that I would like to think about is if we get serious about the grants, maybe that's one step, to almost have a very focused kind of solicitation for events that are outside, like this 50-mile component. So it's not just supporting what we have, but being very intentional, kind of beyond check the box if you think this applies. Because there were runs and other things that worked that people flew in from a variety of states that was exciting to see as well. But I would be curious, again, we don't know what we don't know in that kind of research. So I don't know if that adds anything, but curious about that.
We should probably also think about partnering with Tualatin Valley Tourism. Is that what Tualatin Valley Tourism? Explore Tualatin Valley. I feel like we probably don't need to reinvent the wheel, and maybe reaching out to a regional partner who's in the work and say, what is this region missing? Where are our holes? How could Tigard shine and excel? I have a contact that I could find and partner you with them.
I would appreciate that.
Okay. Excellent. All right. Well, thank you, Mr. King.
Great. Thank you.
We have no non-agenda items, and we do have an executive session. The Town Center Development Agency will enter into an executive session to discuss property negotiations under ORS 192-6602E. All discussions are confidential, and those present may disclose nothing from the session. Representatives of the news media are allowed to attend executive sessions as provided by ORS 192-6604, but must not disclose any information discussed. No executive session may be held for the purpose of taking any final action or making any final decision. Executive sessions are closed to the public. This meeting will adjourn immediately after the executive session. Thank you so much. Good night, Tigard.